So, President Ruto, maybe
Okay.
you can,
Yeah. So
you can ask a question
live.
on him also, because
We
he
are
was talking
live.
about industrialization in Africa. So what he mentioned was that Africa should be the next industrial powerhouse of the world. It should be the next manufacturing factory of the world. You can just say, can you comment about his remarks,
Yeah,
President Ruto?
we
Because
are
he
live
did,
already, Kwame.
yes, okay. It's good that this time you want to keep time. Everyone was is forcing you to keep time.
We are live. Okay.
Okay, let's go. Let's go.
All right. So yeah, welcome. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Connect Africa. Uh, Depending where you are, good morning, good afternoon. We are here on
Are you
our
kidding me? You had already started a long time ago.
we are on Thursday session, the bi-weekly session with Kwame. Yeah, so for today, the topics that we brought for you is this week that just happened, France, under the motto invest in France, or no, choose France investment conference that is led by its President Macron, which attracted big, high value investors. We have seen he met prior to the conference with Elon Musk and others. And this conference has been actually, according to the news that's coming out from France, successful in terms of there were 28 new projects that has been produced, and the new jobs, and also in terms of area of research and development as well. So yeah, it was a success for France. But of course, our interest is about Africa. So we are here to give it a Pan-African perspective and what kind of lesson we can learn from this kind of conferences, because investment conferences are going on all over Africa, but not like in an organized way. It's unilaterally by different member states or African states that are hosted. Now, so to analyze this, we are going to talk about, briefly, what kind of message France is to get across. And then we will talk about, we will compare and contrast in terms of attracting investment between Africa and Europe, and also what are the things Africa, for Africa, what are the things that we need to look at to attract such big investments in the continent. So this will be our talking points. Kwame is here with us to give us all the details. Welcome, Kwame.
Thank you so much, Mahlet. Thank you, and greetings to everyone who's watching us. Our viewers, we value. We take you so much as important, very, very important, to supporting this channel and supporting the African narrative, because the reason we are here is for the African narrative. Africa, for a long time, has been relegated to the back, intellectually, economically, politically, in all aspects, even financially, everywhere. Africa has been relegated to the back, and the African narrative has not been out there. So when you see channels such as these, Connect Africa, then it is upon you as Africans to come out and support the channel, because it's trying to put out our position as Africans, is trying to stand up. What we are trying to do is to stand up for Africans intellectually and to demonstrate to the rest of the world that we also have the capacity to analyze the global events that are happening, the global events that are going on, for our own interest, not for the interest of the world. Because the rest of the world, when you listen to CNN, when you listen to Fox News, they are always analyzing financially, politically, intellectually. They are bringing intellectuals to analyze, whether it is economists, whether it is investors. But what they are doing is they are analyzing for their own interests. And if you watch also CGTN, such channels like CGTN and CCTV from China, they are also analyzing for their own interest. When you watch First Post, for example, Palkishama, they are also analyzing from their point of view. They are analyzing from their point of view as Indians. So when you see a channel as this as we Africans, we have to take the responsibility also to support. So if you are watching this channel, try and subscribe to the channel, like the channel, comment down in the section, and share the channel with the rest of the people so that they can also come, and then we together, working together as Africans, we can build our own narrative. We cannot build it alone. We can only build this narrative, even though we have decided to be on the front line, but we can only build this narrative if we are working with you, people who are watching us together. So we want to thank you. And Mahlet, I thank you also for taking the initiative to start such a channel and such a narrative, which is very important for our continent. As you have rightly mentioned, let us get right into it immediately.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Kwame. Indeed. Yeah, if you have not subscribed, please subscribe and go. It's all about information, education. So others also need to get this information. Please share this link with others. So without further ado, I will go straight to the first question for today. So we have seen that President Macron is out and about making controversial speeches, moves, actions. We have analyzed here the last time that he was visiting China, Russia, and his interview, his comments. But today we are here because there was this the sixth edition of Choose France Investment Conference 2023 that just has been held in France this week. Now we have seen high-profile investors like Elon Musk, who is the second richest man in this planet, as articles and different things say. But what is the cost? What I wanted to ask is, what is Macron trying to get at? I mean, what is the message? It's just pure investment. He talks about industrialization. Even if they do industrialization, from where they're going to get the raw material? What is, like, besides the face value, how should we translate the move by President Macron?
Thank you very much, Mahlet, for that question. What we are seeing is, of course, as he rightly put it, President Macron, that he is trying to attract investments into France. And of course, we know that investments come with the creation of jobs. But when you look at the selection of the particular business leaders who are attending this this investment so-called summit or meeting by the President Macron, you can see the type of investment that he is looking to attract into France. And as you have mentioned, our interest here is Africa, of course. And the reason why we wanted to look at this particular topic of investment is how do those investments which he's trying to attract into France relate to the type of investments which we are saying that we are trying also to attract in Africa. You have had numerous African leaders go out there, whether it is in France, whether it is the US Africa Summit, whether it is in Beijing, whether it is in the Middle East. You have had our African leaders go out there to attract investments, in the name of attracting investments and pleading and urging investors to come and invest in Africa. You had, President Ruto recently was in Europe, also, urging that they should come and invest in Africa. But what is unfortunate is that what we are not seeing, or what we have not been seeing, is the type of investments or the type of investors like Elon Musk or Pfizer or Moderna, such huge investments, or like Chevron coming, for example, to Africa to set up huge oil refinery where you can see and say that this is the biggest oil refinery that has been set up by Chevron in Africa, or This is a manufacturing facility which Tesla has set up on the African continent to manufacture cars or to manufacture batteries, because we have the raw materials, of course. So why not come, for example, you need the cobalt from the Democratic Republic of Congo, you need the motors which you are using to run your vehicles. We have the copper in Zambia, which is the biggest manufacturer, producer of raw copper as a raw material. And of course, close to the Democratic Republic of Congo, there's a lot of copper too. So why not come and set up some factory here, some sort of giga factory? Because we have the materials to manufacture the batteries, and we have the materials to manufacture and also the motors which will run these vehicles. So you are in the middle. Africa is in the middle of the world. We are in the middle between, the United States on the other side as a continent. We are in the middle. We have China on the other side. We have India on the other side. We have Australia in the south. You have in the northern part of the continent, the Middle East, and then you have the United Kingdom and Europe in the north, and Russia. So if Tesla is to set up a manufacturing facility anywhere in the world where it will be cheap for them to transport some of these manufactured finished goods to maybe to assemble cars, it should be Africa, because the materials are there. The location is excellent for the African continent, that if you manufacture, for example, motors here or batteries, they should be easily movable to the United States if you want to. They should easily be moved from Africa to China. They should easily be moved from Africa to Europe. They should be easily moved from Africa to Australia. So because Africa, like we have said, is strategically located, is just in the middle of the world. So that means the cost of transportation and the cost of manufacturing will be very low. Looking at our labor also, the cost of our labor compared to all these areas that I'm mentioning, Europe, China, United States, is lower, is much lower compared to all those areas. But why are these investments not coming to Africa? And President Macron, of course, these are the types of investment that he's looking at with the invitation of Elon Musk. A few days ago, Elon Musk broke ground for the construction of a battery factory, in Texas a few days ago. And they have a giga factory in Germany, which is manufacturing vehicles. So what I'm seeing is that particularly he's trying to attract Elon Musk to come to France so that he can set up a battery factory in France. And on the other hand, this, what I would call the high value investments. He's trying to attract the high value investments. And when we come to talk about Africa, when we come to the stage of talking about Africa, I'll try to differentiate the difference between high value investments and the low value investments, because it looks like what Africa is currently attracting is the low value investments. There's no strategy, regardless, of the advantages which we have all across the African continent, some of which I've already mentioned. There has not been a strategy, a concrete strategy of attracting high value investments, whether it is, with urging the African diaspora, some of them who have a lot of money. You can go to musicians, movie stars, and all those, celebrities, the African descendants, African descendants who are celebrities and have a lot of wealth. There has not been a strategy for Africa to attract them, to attract those investments. For example, invite them at the African Union. We have great people like Akon who can mobilize, but there has not been a particular strategy of bringing these high value investments to Africa and attracting them there. So what we are seeing is that Macron is taking that advantage, is taking advantage of that opportunity of attracting the high value investments. And so that's why we see the CEO of Tesla Motors, Elon Musk, we see the CEO of Pfizer, such major, manufacturing entities. They are the ones which he invited to this particular investment meeting.
Thank you. Thank you, Kwame, for that clarification. You know, I think most of us, we just think that, okay, even they call it sometimes, I think in Ethiopia, foreign direct investment. So it's good to clarify between that low value and high value investment. Now, let's move now. What is organized now by led by President Macron is it's choose France. It's all about France. On the other hand, now African states, for example, Ethiopia have done it in April last month. South Africa also had one investment conference in the same month in April. And Kenya is going to have investment conference at the end of this month. If we look at really investment conferences organized by Europe, like, for example, the France one, and then that are organized by the African states, what is the difference between the two? Of course, their economical status is not the same. Are we trying, to get investors within Africa? Mostly, it's like when we hear the word foreign direct investment, usually it's from Europe or Asia or the US. So, in terms of attracting investment, can you tell us, the difference between the two?
So there is two types of investments which you can talk of in a particular country. For example, if you are attracting like foreign direct investments, there is what we call high value investments, and there is what we call low value investments. And unfortunately, for Africa, there has not been a distinction. The leaders or the strategists for the African continent or for the various, of course, we have not seen any strategists for the African continent since the times of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. But the strategists for the various African states, that is if they exist, that is even if they exist, have not distinguished between the low value investments and the high value investment. So for them, anything that is termed investment, they just clap their hands and say, we have attracted foreign direct investments. So there has not been any scrutinization to what extent these investments benefit the people. What is the real value that is being brought to the continent or to the various African states. Because what we want to see on the African continent is the high value investments, is the vast benefits that come from the high value investments. But what we have been seeing is that you get investments where someone comes to the continent and buys a utility company which belongs to the nation with strategies which they are, John Perkins called the economic hitman, confessions in which he wrote it about in the Confessions of an Economic Hitman, that they take over utility companies and they tell us that they are bringing new money to invest. But when in actuality, they are coming to exploit the people. So in such investments, you don't get really things like technology transfer, whereby that technology can be transferred, to the indigenous people, and the indigenous people can even use it to start their own companies, which in turn can compete against, or can compete against the companies which came to carry out this investment in that area. So those are the ones which you would call high value investments, where individuals will go and work with these particular corporations. They will learn this technology, and even in turn, they'll turn around and start their own companies to be able to compete against these investments which we have brought. So what we have been seeing in Africa is that we have only experienced exploitative majority, actually, I will not say only, but I will say that majority of investments on the African continent have been exploitative, and that is because of certain reasons, which I would touch, later. There is certain reasons behind this. They have been exploitative, that you find that the same type of so-called investments that were carried out during the colonial times, they are the same types of investments going on today into the extractive industry. There has been investment in extractive industry, not to add value. Now, the idea of adding value is being used only rhetorically. When you come to countries like Ghana, you go to Uganda, you go to different countries, Nigeria, the economic powerhouse of the continent, even South Africa, and majority of the other Democratic Republic of Congo, Guinea, all these countries which have immense material resources, Ivory Coast, whether it is agriculture, whether it is just material resources which are coming out of the ground, that the word adding value to our resources is now being only used rhetorically, but not in practice. They are not practicing what they are saying. So you see that the investment that has been attracted, because the word investment has been used universally without distinction between the high value and low value investments, then the Western corporations and other foreign corporations, whether you are talking about Indians, whether you are talking about even Chinese to a certain extent, they take advantage of this, that these people, they don't understand the difference between high value investments and low value investments. And they take advantage of that and they exploit. So they bring corporations, they bring their own labor. The corporations which come here, they are extractive in nature. They only extract material. They pollute the environment to the extent that even in the communities where those factories, those investments are located, you do not find any valuable investments. I'll give you an example. Any valuable development, any significant development. I'll give you an example of one community in Ghana which has produced gold for over 100 years, and that community is called Obuasi. It has produced gold for almost 100 years for the British, because the British were here colonizing. They were in Ghana colonizing. But when you go to the community, even the roads are very bad. They are not paved. It's like a slum. The community is like a slum. But this is a place that has been producing gold for more than 100 years. And what do we find there? We find there corporations like Anglo Gold. We find, corporations like Anglo Gold Ashanti, which is an American company, Anglo-American, I think it's called Anglo-American Ashanti, something like that, which has been exploiting gold from this area. You find in other communities, corporations like Newmont. But when you go to the areas where they are operating, the roads themselves are not even paved, and yet they're extracting, immense profits from the land. But when you go to the communities, they give lip service. They'll come and dig 2 boreholes, 3 boreholes, build 1 classroom, and claim that they have done a lot of job when it comes to corporate social. They call it corporate social responsibility. This is what they name it. So they bring TV, cameras and radio stations and pay them to broadcast this, that they are doing a very good job, a big job, within the community. They are giving back. They call it giving back to the community. And actually, the idea of giving back to the community, I personally don't believe in it. Because when you say you are giving back to the community, it means that you have taken something from them. You have taken something from the community. So if you have taken something from the community, that means you have stolen something from the community. So what I believe is that if you really care about the community, then it should be the idea of sharing of what you have, benefited from the community, what the community has given you. The community has given us, then we should share with the community. We should not say we are giving back. Because if you say you are giving back, it means you have taken something from the community, either illegally, or you have stolen, or you have you have blackmailed the people and taken something from them. So now you are saying that you are giving back. I think it is a very bad term and the rhetoric which they are using, and they do it in front of cameras after digging, drilling about 2 boreholes and then building 1 classroom and saying that they are doing a great job. But the roads, when you look at the roads which are supposed to transport the people in that community and improve their lives, and so that the people can enjoy these roads to trade, to carry out their own trade, these things are not happening. So we have the high value investments and we have the low value investments. We want to attract to Africa the high value investments. We want summits at the African Union headquarters in Addis Ababa, or at the AU Secretariat in Accra, where we will have CEOs like Tesla, we'll have CEOs who matter around the globe in major corporations, BYD in China, these companies coming to Africa, because Africa, to be honest, has a big enough middle class of more than 300 million people, which is almost the same population as the United States. So I believe that Africa is in that position where it should be able to attract these investments if we do the right things. But we are not attracting these high value investments, which lead to the transfer of technology to Africa, so that our people are skilled up to the level whereby they will be able to start the same companies on the continent, because this is the same strategy which China used. But we are not in that position because we are not acting in a certain way in which we are supposed to act, and especially starting with our leaders, that the position in which we have put ourselves does not warrant these corporations to be attracted to the African continent. The leaders, how they are behaving, how they are organizing our society, does not attract these major corporations like Tesla, regardless of the advantages which we have, that we are strategically located across the world. We have the materials, we have cheap labor, we have a growing middle class, because Africa right now is being looked as is going to be the fastest growing region in the world. But why are we not attracting these high value investments? And these are the questions which people are not talking about right now. But these are the very things which, for us as real Pan-Africans, or people who care about this continent and our people, these are the questions which are lingering in our mind. Why are we not attracting the high value investments? And instead we are outside there begging here, begging people to come and invest, and the high value investments are not being attracted. And I think that we need a strategy as the African continent. We need a strategy on attracting the high value investments, because like President Ruto mentioned, Africa should be the next, manufacturing superpower of the globe, or, of the world. This is where the majority of things should be manufactured, in this 21st century, which we are dealing with. Thank you very much, Mahlet.
Thank you, Kwame, for that. But the only thing I'm missing is in terms of comparing between, in terms of attracting investment between Africa and Europe. If you can just quickly tell us, then how is Europe different from Africa? You have told us consciously or unconsciously, or because we are not in that position, our leaders do not put themselves in that position, then we end up attracting the low value investment. Now, if we look at Europe, what are they trying to do? We have seen France, okay, it's a high value investment. Also other countries in Europe, how are they attracting investment if it's different from Africa? Just quickly, and then we move to the third question.
Yeah, so
from Africa, first of all.
So Europe, to a certain extent, Of course, we know the historically there's bias against Africa. Of course, we know that. Even we have seen economists mentioning this. There's a gentleman who went about. There's a video which went viral, I think, in 2020, whereby the gentleman was speaking at a conference, a white guy, and he was mentioning that Europe doesn't want Africa to develop. But he was not the first person. He was not the first person to say this. Even people like Walter, one of the greatest Pan-Africanists, who wrote How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. Walter Rodney wrote a book called How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. There is, of course, a strategy, a deliberate strategy of keeping Africa underdeveloped. That strategy is there. We cannot deny that. But at the same time, we cannot dwell on that and say, because this strategy is there, we will get frozen as a people, that we will despair and not fight back. All nations that have developed, they have had to fight against certain, difficulties, certain problems, certain challenges before they were able to develop. You can look at China. They had to fight against certain challenges of underdevelopment. China 20, 30 years, 40 years ago, 30, 40 years ago was not like that. It was the same, almost like Africa. South Korea was the same. Ghana was much more developed in the 60s than South Korea, but look at where South Korea is today. So all these nations have had to come up with a strategy of fighting against the challenges. So we have historically that they don't want us to develop, and they want these markets. But these problems, we are not the first people to have this challenge. Even China had it, that Europe wanted. You have heard of the Chinese Opium Wars, that Europe fought against China, especially the UK and the United States. They fought against China so that they can dominate China's market. And so that is the situation which we are seeing in Africa today, that historically we have that challenge, but I don't want to give that as an excuse, because we have the capacity to fight back.
Bravo.
We have the capacity to fight back. So there has been that effect of historically, they don't want us to develop. They want our markets, and they want to use these material resources to manufacture those products. So they would not want corporations like Boeing, Airbus, you can talk of Embraer. So all these to come and start manufacturing those products on the African continent, because it would make them lose jobs in Europe. Over, 1,000 jobs, 25,000 jobs. If you look at these corporations, majority of them, they are employing 8,000 jobs, 25,000 jobs, 10,000 jobs. You see, so all these jobs, they feel that those jobs should remain in their country. As you have seen, Joe Biden's recent drive, made, I think he say, of course, Trump said, "Make America great again." The purpose was to bring back the manufacturing facilities. That is why he started the trade war with China. And Joe Biden, of course, has also built on the same narrative of made in America, I think made in America again and stuff like that. Is trying to attract back the cheap manufacturing from China, to the United States, to create those numbers of jobs. So when we are talking about manufacturing these equipment, we are talking about these high value investments, like manufacturing of chips, manufacturing of aircraft, manufacturing of semiconductors, electronics, and manufacturing of vehicles. We have that challenges that we have to fight against Europe, because historically it has been dominant in this area. So we also have to put up a fight. So that is a matter of history. And there is a historical narrative also which has been dominating the global stage, that Africa is a risky place to invest. And you heard this also being mentioned by President Ruto during his speech yesterday at the Pan-African Parliament, that there is a narrative which goes around that Africa is a risky place to invest. But when President Trump invited the African leaders to Washington, I remember him mentioning at the same time that his friends are making huge profits investing in Africa. So even though there is that narrative that goes on in the Western world that investments in Africa are risky, but at the same time, there are groups of them who are benefiting from the exploitative investments which are done in Africa, the ones which I call the low value investments. But the narrative persists. Of course, that narrative of Africa being risky, even if it is not risky, it persists because they benefit, they are benefiting on that narrative. And that narrative helps them to block off what I said, to block off the manufacturing, the high value manufacturing from coming to Africa. And then all those people who have spare money that they can use to come to, invest in Africa. So this is what we are seeing. And also we see that Europe is a little bit more organized. Like right now in Europe, you see that there's a single passport. If you have a passport, a Canadian, if you have a German passport, you can travel all over Europe. If you have a French passport, you can travel all over Europe. So this is another issue, that the market is fully integrated, and we know that the Africa Continental Free Trade Area also is trying to do that, but the political will is still lacking on the African continent, and that is why we are facing these problems. So we cannot attract investments when we still have some instability on the African continent. You have heard of Al-Shabaab, and you have heard of Boko Haram. All these instabilities also, they become a problem. So we have our efforts are uncoordinated on the security front, on the economic front. Our efforts are uncoordinated on the African continent. On the foreign policy front, the efforts also are uncoordinated. So we are not speaking with one voice, like how you would say, for example, Europe, when it comes to negotiate, it is negotiating as a bloc. And when China is coming to negotiate with us, is negotiating as a major, superpower, major economy. When India is coming to us, actually also is coming with its population, but when it is coming, it is negotiating with Africa as a fragmented entity. If we were unified into one entity of 1.4 billion people, then that would be an advantage. So this is, to a certain extent, an advantage that Europe has over Africa, that it has control over our narrative. Then there's that historical notion that they don't want us to develop the narrative, and then they are working as a bloc. They are somehow coordinated to a greater extent compared to Africa. They are coordinated politically, they are coordinated economically, and Africa is uncoordinated. So you cannot attract these major investments if you have been labeled as a place of instability. You have Boko Haram, you have Al-Shabaab, you have Al-Qaeda running all over the Sahel. You have these you have instability in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and of course in some of these conflicts, the same people are playing a part. We know that, but these are all challenges we as Africans have to find a solution to, because we are the owners of the continent. We cannot put it entirely on the outside world, even though we can hold the outside world accountable for destabilizing the region, but it works more, it will work better if we start by organizing ourselves internally. We can coordinate our efforts. And you have seen this, that every time we have coordinated our efforts as Africans, every time we have spoken to each other as Africans, every time we have coordinated and worked together as Africans, there has been respect, and we have achieved so much. We have achieved so much. You have seen recently Prime Minister Abiy, his effort to talk to the region, to communicate with the region when Ethiopia is facing problems, was able to bear fruit, that Africans were able to come together, sit in Pretoria, negotiate, in South Africa, and peace was able to return to Ethiopia. So this is what, to a certain extent, we are lacking, that we're lacking those leaders who are patriotic to crusade, for a unified foreign policy, to crusade for a unified economic policy, to crusade for a unified military to support and stop the instability on the African continent. So that is where Europe has been defeating us in the past period, and that is where we have been losing, to the other regions of the world, which are looked at as relatively stable. Even when you look at India, so they go there because of some of these, factors. But all in all, I'm saying is that the responsibility at the end of the day falls on us, and that is why we here at Connect Africa, we are making our effort. We are contributing our effort towards this process of unifying Africa and talking to the African heads of state and writing to them and advising here and there. So I'm glad that we are contributing our quota, and that is why we invite all the others to come and join us in this effort.
Yeah, thank you, Kwame, for analyzing the difference between, in terms of attracting investments between Europe and Africa. What kind of advantage Africa has, and then what kind of advantage, of course, we cannot deny that Europe has their unity, being able to move freely. All those are advantage. And then the conflicts here and there in the continent, also in Africa, that's a disadvantage. But yeah, let's move to our final question for today. We have heard during this conference of Choose France Investment Conference, talking about industrialization. It's mainly about electric cars and batteries. And then, coincidentally, also, we have heard President Ruto's speech yesterday at a Pan-African Parliament, where he said Africa is actually does hold that unique position to be the next powerhouse of industrialization, and then not this typical type kind of industrialization that we used to see, but a different one. So do you think that Africa is ready for attracting such high value investments? You might have touched it here and there, but this is mainly about this. Is Africa ready? That's number one. Number two, what are the things that Africa should look at, even if they're ready, even if Africa is ready, then to attract such high value investment? What are the things we need to improve, or what are the things that we need to do to get such investments in our continent? I think those are the two final questions for you, Kwame. You are muted.
Thank you, Mahlet. The question of whether Africa is ready, I think it is the one which would take us some time, but I think generally, as a continent, I would say that we are ready because we have everything in place. But on the other hand, is the leadership of the continent that is showing that it is not ready. It's not ready because it has not figured out how to talk to each other, how to coordinate the efforts of the whole continent, how to coordinate their efforts towards a unified policy. And of course, we have seen President Ruto speak about this on numerous occasions, even during the Mo Ibrahim leadership weekend, which happened in Nairobi at the Kenyatta International Conference, Center. he spoke about it, that we have started speaking to each other, how they have been summoning us, Europe and, Russia is summoning us, the United States summoning India, Turkey, how they have been summoning us. And of course, he repeated the same thing yesterday. So the African people, I believe they are ready. The continent is ready. It is the leaders, leaders and the leadership of the continent, or what you would call heads of state, if you don't want to call them, if you don't want to use that term of leadership, the heads of state of the continent are the ones who have not been ready all this time. The African people have been ready since the 1960s, when independence was achieved, but the leaders have not been to that level where they are ready to fight for the continent, to take advantage of the resources which we have, which I'm coming to mention. Now, what are the resources that we can capitalize on? What can we capitalize on for us to be able to attract these investments as Africans? Number one, we have a huge population across the African continent. When these investors are looking for places where to invest, they are looking for places where there's a big market. There's a huge market where they will be able to manufacture, cheaply, but at the same time, where they will be able to sell those products. And this is what made China irresistible, that corporations like General Motors, Ford, all the others, they had to go in and establish manufacturing. Volkswagen, Mercedes-Benz, they could not resist going to China because of the huge market. The labor was cheap. Because of this huge population, the labor was educated and in abundance. And this is the same thing with the African continent that we have. Right now, we have a population of 1.4 billion people, but we have a literacy rate of more than 70%. These are the real figures. These are the advantages. So when you have a market of 1.4 billion people, and you have a population that will provide you the market, and the population is literate, that means you are ready. You are very ready on that front. What it requires you now is to aggregate that population. And when you top that up with the fact that you have the youngest population across the globe, people have spoken about this. Even President Ruto also mentioned it yesterday during his speech at the Pan-African Parliament. Kamala Harris, when she came to Ghana, she mentioned it. Numerous leaders have spoken about this, that Africa has the youngest population. Now, this should tell you that you should not have issues with security. You should not have issues with security, because the people who are working in the security, if you need 2 million people for a unified African military, this is very possible. You should easily be able to achieve this because you have the youngest population. So these are the advantages. These are all the advantages which come from having a huge population that we have on the African continent. Number two, our GDP of $3.5 trillion. We are not using the $3.5 trillion on the African continent as aggregated to our advantage, because we have decided to fragment the African economy into 55, or what you would call 56, states, if you include Sahrawi Republic. So you cannot harness the power of this. This is enough capital. $3.5 trillion makes us the 50th biggest economy in the world. It makes us the 5th biggest economy in the world. After the United States, China, Germany, and Japan, we become the 5th. We would be the biggest economy the 50 biggest economy, bigger than the UK, bigger than India, who are next there. Instead, we see that the UK summons Africa to UK Africa Summit. Yet we have a bigger economy than them. They should not be summoning us. Turkey, with less than $1 trillion, which is around even less than $100 billion, also summons Africa. Yet Turkey's economy is not even 30% of Africa's economy. Turkey summons Africa. So this is disgraceful. India, we have a bigger economy than India. India summons Africa also for summits. So this is disgraceful. Why? Because we are not taking advantage of these, we are not leveraging these advantages which we have. Number 3, we have the immense material resources. The material resources, these ones, I don't need to talk so much about them because many people have spoken about them. Africa has 30% of the world is remaining material resources and stuff like that. People like Nana Addo, Akufo-Addo have spoken about them. All the other leaders, even at the Pan-African Parliament, the global leaders have spoken about it. I don't need to mention this. Everyone knows that Africa has the resources. But the question is, have those resources been used for the benefit of the African people? Have they been used to the benefit of Africa? They are not. And everything again falls on leadership. Everything again falls on leadership. Number 4, we have the strategic location, which I've already mentioned. Africa is strategically located on the global stage, on the global map, that when we manufacture things from Africa, we should be able to deliver those things anywhere across the globe, cheaply compared to how China is manufacturing in China, in the far east of the world, and transporting those goods to Europe, transporting those goods to the United States, but it is still making profit. So how much more we Africans who are in the middle of the globe, that means we can station manufacturing hubs all over across the continent, and we manufacture depending on the needs of the world, what the world needs from us. What the United States needs, we can manufacture it from the western part of the African continent. What China needs and India, we can manufacture it from the eastern part of the continent. What Europe needs, we can decide to manufacture it from the northern part of the continent. What Australia and others need in the south, we can manufacture them from the southern part of the continent. These are the advantages of our continent. These are the advantages which Africa has. But these advantages of a huge population, the aggregated huge GDP of 3.5 trillion, the material resources and the location, we cannot take advantage of them if we do not come together and start working together as Africans. If we do not come together in the same spirit which Nkrumah mentioned, these are the advantages which Nkrumah saw in the 1960s and 1950s and 1960s and called for unity because he wanted to see Africa's development and reconstruction fast-tracked. And that is why he said, seek ye first the political kingdom. A lot of people mistake Nkrumah's words when he spoke and said, seek ye first the political kingdom. But everyone has complained about leadership. What Nkrumah meant was that seek ye the right leadership. Everyone has mentioned the problem of leadership. Even people like PLO Lumumba have mentioned that Africa's problem is squarely the problem of leadership. This is what Nkrumah was mentioning. It's the same thing which Nkrumah was mentioning, that seek ye first the political kingdom, and all the other things shall be added unto you. So this is what Nkrumah meant. So if we figure out how to organize ourselves as Africans on the political level and our political will, all these other problems, I believe, will be solved. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kwame. Really very interesting to hear, the advantage as an African. It makes me really happy and hopeful, but of course, a huge work is expected from our leaders or heads of states. But as a Pan-African platform, our job is to identify those things for Africa, meaning what kind of advantage that the continent have actually now related to this topic in terms of attracting investment, and then that the heads of state should be able to speak, like just like what President Ruto said. That's the conversation we need to have, that it's not them telling us, oh, you have this problem and that problem, we look for some money for you. Even how they are belittled in the conversation. But they should come out and say, look, this is the advantage I have if you do this, if you invest this. There are the advantages.
Yeah. Mahlet, maybe what I did mention is that I don't want people to think that the responsibility all should fall on the leaders. So if the leaders have not moved in that direction, that is why we've mentioned that there is some work which we are doing as a people. So then the task of putting the leadership in the right position falls on us. And that involves a lot of work by the African civil society. If we recognize a time like this has arrived whereby we should be developing rapidly by leveraging the advantages which we have already mentioned, then we have to go to work as Africans, as African civil society, and stand in the gap to be able to correct these abnormal situations, these anomalies. We need to correct them. So that means we have to talk to each other as African civil society, join the Pan-African organizations which are close to you, speak to them. Africa Continental Unity Party, they are there. Uhuru Movement, Chairman Omari Yashitela, Kwame Nkrumah Ideological Institute. Numerous organizations are out there which are Pan-African in nature. Connect Africa is here. We talk to each other. All Africa People Revolutionary Party. These are all organizations which are out there. So this is the work that is cut out for us, this generation. If the leaders are not stepping up to their responsibility, then it is our responsibility to step up and then correct things through the methods which we will discuss going forward. Thank you very much, Mahlet.
Thank you. Yeah, it's indeed, this is now informal. We have finalized our questions and answers, but just extra topics which are still interesting and related to the main topic, and something that has been in my mind. Maybe Ghana is really an example in the continent, because you have that the year of return in 2019, and then recently also, I don't know if it's after the pandemic, there were a lot of celebrities that came to Ghana. Did this mobilization, or inviting these celebrities to Ghana, was related also to investment by any chance? I'm just curious.
Absolutely. The purpose was to attract, of course, investments. Of course, to invite the African people of African descent to come back to the continent. On the other hand, it was also to attract investment. But the question is the mindset of the people who are attracting the investment. When the investments, of course, if money was poured in, whether it is tourism and through that, what was the money used for? So there is that question. Is there any companies that were started from what, or was there a purposeful policy or strategy that the money that has been attracted from this year of return, whether we have taxed it, whether it is in one way or the other, is going to be used to set up maybe technology companies or manufacturing companies? Has that strategy been there? Is there a policy like that? So that should be the question. But that is not there. There was no strategy like that. There was no policy like that. And so we see, after all this and after all the resources the country has, we see Ghana going back with ball in the hand to the IMF to beg that they should give it loans, because the leaders or the heads of state, they have decided to misuse the country's resources for their own gain, of course, and the various groups, and then, for other purposes other than the purposes of advancing the interests of the African people. So that is all I can say about the year of return.
Yeah. Another curiosity, of course, a question that's born out of curiosity. What do you think of, attracting, when we attract investment, mostly we look at, as an African states, outside of the continent, whether it's an Asian investor or European investor, but we don't look at inward, although there are, people, big businessmen like Aliko Dangote, the Nigerian man who now he's investing in various African countries. Are we really looking for such investors within the continent? And will it be more advantageous for the continent to have those investors from the continent rather than outside of the continent, or it just doesn't matter?
Of course, it matters, but there has not been a deliberate policy of fostering the local industry, the local entrepreneurs, local manufacturing capacity. There has not been a deliberate effort to support entrepreneurs, and all the concentration has been put on attracting foreign investment. And what we have seen, that even the foreign investments, like we have discussed, has been the low value type of investment, which has not added so much on the African GDP or on the African economy. It has not added so much, but instead has been majorly exploitative, like foreign corporations, like banks, foreign banks, which are all over the African continent, majorly have come here to facilitate the outflow, the illicit financial outflow from the African continent. So these local entrepreneurs, they don't have capital, because the foreign banks are the ones who are in control of the African economy. So the local entrepreneur cannot get capital because the interest rate is exorbitant at 35%. How can you pay an interest rate on a loan? How can you pay interest on a loan at 35%? It is impossible. It is impossible to find a business growing at that rate to be asked to pay 35% interest on a loan. So the foreign banks have taken over. Our local entrepreneurs are relegated to decide that they have to compete with the foreign, foreign corporations, and majorly who are exploitative. And so that is why you see that majority of the Africans or the African, states are importing what they are consuming in what Pierre Lumumba called Africa, imports, produces what it doesn't consume and consumes what it doesn't produce. So this is the tragedy that we are facing, but this has to be changed, and we have to fight to be able to change that narrative. We have to be able to change this, situation as Africans by working together, whether it is in the West, East, South, North, Central. We have to work together to be able to change this, this type of situation that we are facing.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Kwame. Really, with that, we have come to the end of the session for today. We will see you again, myself and Kwame, on our Tuesday session. So thank you very much, those of you who were here. And please, when the stream is over, share the link with others. It's all about information. Information is power, as we always say. So we need to educate each other and also to share information. If you want to help us, I will pin in the comment section to support the channel. Please go to our PayPal account and you can support through that system. And thank you very much, Kwame. Unless you have something to say, that's it for me.
Yes, I just want to thank everyone who tuned in this evening or afternoon or morning, depending on where you are. We want to encourage you to support the channel, like how like what Mahlet has mentioned. Support the channel, support us. Even if you don't want to support us, you have to support us so that we can continue to uplift the continent. Because when we lift the continent, it is the upliftment of the African people, and we want to do that confidently, without wobbling and looking this side and looking that side. So that is the purpose. That's the very reason you should support our efforts, because we say that we are not only talking here, but we are working with other organizations and other people, and we have initiatives already which are going on, like signing petitions which are calling for unified Africa, the establishment of a single military for the African continent, the single passport. These are all petitions which we have going on, and I'll ask Mahlet to put down those petitions in the comment section and the description, so that you can see them and sign them. Support, like I've said, don't only support us, but also support other Pan-African organizations, because the future of our continent and the ideas that are going to drive our continent in the next phase of rapid development and reconstruction, those ideas are within the ideas of our Pan-African forefathers like Kwame Nkrumah, Marcus Garvey, W.E.B. Du Bois, and all the other great Pan-Africanists who wrote down and put down the things which we normally talk about and we mention. These are the ideas that are going to develop our continent. This is what we are fighting for. So go out there, support all Pan-African organizations, and let's work together in rebuilding our African continent. Thank you very much, Mahlet.
Thank you, Kwame. Have a good evening and have a good weekend, everyone, and to you, Kwame, as well. Thank you for your dedication. Thank you. Bye bye.